The speech was billed as America's environmental leadership. It might as well have been called Make America Clean Again.
We want the cleanest air. We want crystal clean water.
Donald Trump boasted of his administration's accomplishments cleaning up toxic sites, America's top ranking in access to clean drinking water, and declining air pollution.
We're doing a very tough job, and not everybody knows it.
We're here today to celebrate our incredible record of natural conservation and environmental protection over the last 4 years. I've been working with your both governors, your last governors. Your current governor is fantastic, by the way, and we've been working very, very hard. We've been working very hard together to make sure everything is perfect and to recommit ourselves to preserving the awesome majesty of God's great creation. I want to thank you all for being here. My administration's proving every day that we can improve our environment while creating millions of high-paying jobs.
But for a president who has denied his own scientists' claims about climate change, critics say his words ring hollow.
I would say that is comical if his policies weren't so dangerous. I've often said that his policies, both around air pollution and water pollution, should actually come with a label, almost like cigarettes, that says that this policy is dangerous for your health.
From pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, to weakening vehicle emission rules, to eliminating dozens of regulations meant to protect the environment, Ali says Trump is taking the country backwards.
They have not moved forward on one piece of legislation that has actually helped to protect people's lives.
He says even Trump's own pronouncements about clean air are undercut by his support for the coal industry.
We're going to have clean coal, really clean coal.
Today's speech, however, may have been more about the political climate. Polls show Trump ranks far behind Democrats on environmental issues.
We have only one America. We have only one planet.
But while he talked about air and water quality, there was little mention of reducing emissions to address rising global temperatures, the crux of the climate change crisis.
The president often does this apples and oranges types of thing just to confuse folks.
In fact, while he talked a lot about how a strong economy is good for the environment, President Trump never once mentioned climate change in his speech.
The pristine sights of the American Antarctic, its iconic land home to polar bears, caribou, foxes, and more, including the occasional migrators. Underneath the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge's coastal strip, the area known as 1002, there may be a treasure trove of gas and oil, an estimated 10 billion barrels. And last month, U.S. President Donald Trump finalized controversial plans to drill for it. The move paves the way for concessions to be completed by the end of next year. Bidding could start much sooner.
It could mean another 4.3 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, which is about the equivalent of 2/3 of U.S. annual emissions.
The right to drill in the ANWR, as it's been dubbed, has been advocated by Republicans for decades. In 2017, an Alaskan senator slipped a provision reversing a long-standing ban into the Trump tax bill.
We return now to the president's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. We want to take a closer look at some of the claims President Trump made during his remarks in the Rose Garden yesterday. William Brangham has that.
As president, I can put no other consideration before the well-being of American citizens. Thus,
in his announcement yesterday, President Trump gave several reasons why he thought the Paris Accord was a bad idea. The main points the president made were that the Paris Accord is unfair to the U.S., that it would hurt American workers, and that it won't really slow the pace of dangerous climate change. So let's go through some of those claims. The first thing the president said was, we'll get out of Paris, but maybe we'll strike a better deal.
Begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States.
But leaders from many of the other 195 nations in the deal said there was no appetite for renegotiation. French President Emmanuel Macron summed up the view of many.
Et je considère qu'il commet là He committed an error for the interests of his country, his people, and a mistake for the future of our planet. We will not renegotiate a less ambitious accord. There is no way.
President Trump also implied that the Paris Accords are binding on the United States, but they're not. The entire accord relies on voluntary commitments. So many argue that if the president wanted to stay in and wanted to change the U.S.'s commitment, he's largely free to do so. Jason Grimay is the president of the Bipartisan Policy Center.
What was unique about the Paris Accord is that it was essentially a collection of 200 individual promises. Every country came forward and made a unique commitment. And each country has the capacity to reassert its own commitment. So I think it's entirely reasonable for President Trump to say, I'm uncomfortable with this aspect of what the United States committed, and therefore we're going to take a somewhat different approach. The U.S. would obviously have much more capacity to influence the choices, views, and efforts of others if we were part of that conversation.
Another one of the main complaints the president made, this will hurt U.S. jobs.
Compliance with the terms of the Paris Accord and the onerous energy restrictions that is placed on the United States could cost America as much as 2.7 million lost jobs by 2025, according to the National Economic Research Associates.
What we've modeled in terms of job effects is that it's much more of a job shift than it is job loss or net job gain. That jobs go away in coal, you get more jobs in sort of the green jobs, the renewable energy, small effects elsewhere, but it's not a big drop.
President Trump traveled to a UPS airport hub in Georgia to tout his administration's plans to roll back environmental regulations. CBS 4's Natalie Brand is at the White House with details.
Everybody, thank you.
The Trump administration moved forward Wednesday to weaken the 50-year-old National Environmental Policy Act, which mandates environmental reviews of major federal infrastructure projects, from freeways to pipelines. President Trump argues the regulations have blocked or delayed important infrastructure projects.
We're cutting the federal permitting timeline for a major project from up to 20 years or more, hard to believe, down to 2 years or less.
Pro-business groups support the move, but environmentalists call it a giveaway to polluters.